It's now my privilege to introduce somebody that we've mentioned a few times. He's sitting right down here in the front row. George Welsh, our 2014 Colorado Superintendent of the Year. You know, yes, George. And George will be up here in just a minute, but if you know George, he is someone who has led the fight for adequate school funding. He's a lot of things in his role. And most importantly, to me, he's a mentor and a friend. And I think he's that to many of you in this room. His leadership in his school district has been nothing short of transformative, and that's not a word I use lightly. Center is one of the poorest districts in Colorado. I learned yesterday it's the second poorest district. It was the poorest, with over 90% of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. There's a strong English language learner and migrant student population in the center, and low assessed property values create a very difficult school funding situation. Several years ago, the district was struggling with low assessment scores and graduation rates, as well as higher dropout rates than they wanted to see. So you know George. George, he doesn't shy away from a challenge, that's for sure. And where other people might see no possibility, he sees opportunity. He knew that to make a difference in student achievement, the district needed more resources, and he set his sights on doing everything possible to bring much more needed support to his district. These efforts were successful, and along with the work of his district team, school board, and the whole community, George was successful in securing a federal turnaround grant for Center. These funds were immediately put toward developing curriculum, teaching methodologies, and teacher supports necessary to meet the learning needs of students. The impact was powerful. Graduation rates have increased by about 60% over a 6-year period, and the dropout rate has fallen by 10%. More kids are realizing their full potential and setting their sights on higher education for the first time. Join me now in taking a look at Center School District's journey over the past several years.
There you go.
My name is Miguel Sendejas. My oldest daughter's name is Salma. She's 13, going into 8th grade. My middle daughter is Natalia. She's 10, going to go into 4th grade. When Salma was in 3rd grade, her CSAP scores were below 40% of the state standard. And that's very low. That's you know, we're thinking, how can this be?
The result after 1 year was an increase in our reading performance in Haskin Elementary School from only having 28% of our kids reading at grade level based on 3rd grade CSAP measurement. We grew to 41% and we were thrilled. We continued the same process. We trained new teachers, we refined our practices, and we were able to continue doing after-school interventions and summer interventions. And at the end of year 2, our kids, for the first time ever in any subject area, any grade level, scored above the state average. We scored 76% reading proficiency with our 3rd graders.
76%. So that's, you know, we do the math and it's 36% higher. And that's, you know, you could tell where there was funding, where there was not funding. For me, it feels like they have a better opportunity to move ahead.
Clearly, George is committed to ensuring every student in his district has opportunities that they need to succeed, and what he's done in Center is truly remarkable. That video was done, by the way, by Great Education Colorado, and they've done a great job of capturing some of the emotion that I'm feeling up here for what's been accomplished. Please join me in welcoming our 2014 Colorado Superintendent of the Year, George Welsh, to the stage.
Bruce didn't mention that we'll probably maybe not enough of you read his briefcase messages that go out, and I'm just going to have a little fun with this. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of his most recent one, to the bitter end, after announcing Cindy Stevenson and her role that she's going to have in CASE, you might have seen that I was also named one of the nation's tech-savvy superintendents of the year, and I'm very proud of that. And so I've brought Post-it notes to share my remarks. Bruce would have you think that I've accomplished all that single-handedly in center, and here's what I'm good at. I'm good at finding people who have talent, drawing them in to work with me, empowering them to do the best work they possibly can, and the results they get are amazing. There's something very personal about that video to me as well, and that is that even though we were all going through the largest cuts probably in education history in Colorado, and that cohort of kids that was going through the system had entered kindergarten when we hit our first year of cuts, that group, because of the infusion of dollars, but more importantly, the infusion of hard work, becomes our first group that ever achieves at state average. And I know for some of you, state average would be a disappointment, but for us, we felt like we were rock stars. But most importantly, my daughter Priscilla is in that cohort, and so I didn't only help create change that benefits that whole community, it personally benefited me. I'm so proud that she has been at the receiving end of many of these things. I know this isn't about me, but God dang it, I'm Superintendent of the Year, so I'm going to share a few thoughts. Been in education 28 years, 17 as a superintendent. I taught 9 years middle school social studies. I consider my one real full year as a principal to have been an assistant principal, because I dealt with athletics and with discipline. And unfortunately, many of you who are out there who are in the principalship find that you are doing that instead of instructional leadership. And I want to encourage you to do some things differently. What has made me successful? Well, being an old codger and probably certainly having done my worst superintendent work for about the last 13 years, or the prior 13 years before the last 4, I'm willing to learn. And where do I learn? I learn in rooms just like this and in settings just like this. And then I also learn by going to other schools and meeting with other folks and having them come to meet with me. What do I think is also special about me is I'm not hiding any knowledge, obviously. I've learned some things, and I want to share them. And I know there's a bunch of you guys out there who do the same. In fact, I am better because of that. Advice to you. Listen to the conversations that happen around here for the next few days, but focus in on this. Are the conversations leading people to change what's going on in the classroom or not? When you get to join a circle during the next couple of days here and start talking about things, please reflect on, will what this person is trying to accomplish actually change the instructional situation for the kids? And my challenge to you is, if not, go find a different conversation. That's the work we've got to do. We need to do the work that actually changes instruction for the better in the classroom. Want a simple game plan? It's not high-level thought. And we always assume that everybody's actually doing this, but my observation by having been in a lot of schools in Colorado, it's not always the case. Make sure your teachers know what they should be teaching. Brian Sevier's got a great session coming up, right, the next one, talking about the Colorado Sample Curriculum, which CDE has done fantastic work on. Get in there and see how you can ensure that your teachers know what they should be teaching. But not only that, do they know what specific concept about that they're teaching to their kids today? Make sure your kids are engaged in the learning. The story I tell is I had a biology teacher after lunch when I was in high school who let me sleep. I'd fire that son of a gun today if I still had the chance. I'm not sure he's even alive, though. And then make sure your teachers are measuring whether the kids learned what they intended them to learn each day. This sounds fundamental, but look into your system and determine whether it's happening or not. And the biggest bang for your buck you're going to get is if you just make sure that stuff's happening. I guarantee it. It won't be adopting a new curriculum, because we know a lot of times when you adopt a new curriculum, the teacher puts it on the shelf and goes back to doing what they've always done. And it's you guys, especially the building principals, who need to make sure this is happening, but that's not going to happen unless you guys, especially superintendents, hold the building principals accountable for doing that. On that part about measuring whether the students learned it or not, how about having your teachers do something about it if they didn't learn it? The video is a lot about the money we got in center to turn around. And I guarantee we couldn't have done what we did without the money. However, I was so proud that Bruce mentioned that I'm an Iron Man, and you can look at me and say, that's not an Iron Man. Okay, I know it. Okay, this is what I am, though, is I'm someone who knows that if there's something out there I want, and I want to get to it, I know at some point you got to look into how you get there. Trust me, when I trained for an Ironman, I went through the process of researching how I should train. And you know what? We've all been doing that a lot in education, and there's great information out there. But what we've done in center is we strapped on the shorts and put on the t-shirt, and we got out there and did the running, did the swimming, did the biking. And because of the resources we were given and the drive that we had, we got to a better place. That's what I did when I completed the Ironman. 16 hours, 39 minutes, 7 seconds. Not first, but finished. And that's what we're doing in center, and it's because we roll these up, we take the resources we have, and we do the work that needs to be done. There's a lot of excuses every day you get up to not do it. But just you stand in front of your school in the morning, look into the eyes of those kids and decide whether it's time to roll those sleeves up or not. So thanks so much for the honor, and I'm sorry about the time, but I appreciate the work you do, and I'm amazed by what I learn from you every time I engage with you, and so have a great conference.